If you've been following my channel for a while, you probably know that back in May, I made a video citing my dream F1 calendar for the 2026 season. However, I feel that I have now come up with a better calendar for 2026, which I want to share a video about with you. So, without further ado, let's get it. Starting off in the Middle East, I guess you can take one guess, which is Bahrain, of course. Me personally, I don't necessarily like the Bahrain Grand Prix to be hosting the season opener. I quite like Australia to do that. Maybe Bahrain the second or third round of the season, but now I think that starting in the Middle East is actually kind of okay for me. Remaining in the Middle East, we have the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, originally, I didn't want to have the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix on my calendar for human rights. Does anyone get surprised by that? But I wanted to keep it on the calendar. March 22nd is the date for it. Sailing from the Red Sea to the Pacific, next we have Australia on April 5th. As I mentioned earlier, I'd love Australia to be the opener of the season, but ever since COVID happened and it was cancelled in 2020 and the track regulations, it seems like it's not being the opener for me because I found out that the Middle East hosting the season opener is actually okay for me, so I'll just leave it at that. Another 1 week break, staying in Asia for the Chinese Grand Prix on April the 19th. China, of course, its contract expires in 2020 next year, so it probably won't have a race for 2025. But in the future, hopefully, it has a deal to host a race in 2026 and maybe even beyond. I hope that Zhou stays on the F1 grid. Remaining in Asia, a doubleheader this time. Japanese Grand Prix on April 26th. Of course, at Suzuka. Need I say more? From Northeast Asia to Western Asia, we have the Azerbaijan Grand Prix on May 10th. Now, Baku City Circuit is a great circuit for me. Of course, this year it is being moved from its April or June slot down to September, but on my calendar it will be in May. Now it's mostly held in April, June, and now it will be held in September. But this time I wanted to go back to its early slot on the calendar. For the first real European race of the season, we have the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix on May 24th. Now, Imola, because it was cancelled in 2023, I was quite excited to see it back on the calendar for 2024. We'll have it in 2025 and definitely, hopefully, in 2026 because it doesn't have a contract for 2026. Another circuit which doesn't have a contract for 2026 is Monaco on May 31st. Now, because of its history, I hope that Monaco, it probably will get a contract extension for 2026 and beyond because it's one of the 4 remaining circuits from the 1950 F1 calendar. Traveling to the Atlantic, we now have the Canadian Grand Prix on June 14th. For God's sake. Canada, for me, is a great circuit. Course, I'd want to put it in October or something like that, but I realized that there's not really any major slot for it on October, so I just left it in June. Returning to Europe, we have a historic track making its return to the F1 calendar. I think you might know what it is. I don't know. You will not know what it is. Drumroll, please. Germany, June 28th. You'll be happy to hear that. It's of course at the Hockenheimring. I like the Nürburgring, but I feel like Hockenheim, the history has more history than the Nürburgring. I'm not talking about the Nordschleifer, obviously. I would be dumb if I were talking about the Nordschleifer. Remaining in Central Europe, we have the Austrian Grand Prix on July 5th at the Red Bull Ring. I love Austria as a track. 2024 was one of the most controversial races I've ever seen. If you're on Team Lando, do not watch this video. But I say it's a great track. Traveling across the sea to what will eventually be our first triple header of the season, we have Silverstone on July 12th hosting the British Grand Prix. Silverstone is one of the classics of F1. Given this year's race, of course, as a Hamilton fan, watching Hamilton win the British GP was a moment of euphoria for any Hamilton fan out there. Not just any Hamilton fan, but maybe a few other F1 fans out there. The final race before the summer break, we have the Hungarian Grand Prix on July 26th. The Hungaroring, tight and twisty, Monaco without the barriers by F1 fans. It can produce some good races here and there, but it's not really the most entertaining circuit, isn't it? Returning from the summer break, we of course have the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps. Need I say more? August 23rd, to kick off our second triple header of the season. Round 15, because of close proximity to Belgium, of course, the Dutch Grand Prix on August 30th. Who am I kidding? For what you expect to be the last race in Europe, we have the Italian Grand Prix on September 6th. Like I said, stay tuned because this is not the last race in Europe. We still have 2 more European races left before we return to Asia and then America. Round 17 on September 20th, we have the Portuguese Grand Prix at Portimao. Now, if you're not that familiar with F1, you'll probably might not know that Portugal was actually held in September during the late 1980s to the 1990s. This time with Estoril, this time on the calendar. This year, for 2026, we will have Portimao on the calendar. Because of close proximity, of course, to Portugal, and shockingly late in the season, we have the Spanish Grand Prix, the last race in Europe, on September 27th. Spain, of course, used to be the first European race of the season, but now it is the last European race of the season on September 27th. Returning to Asia for one race only, the Singapore Grand Prix on October the 11th. Now, it might seem a bit crazy to put Singapore in October. It was scheduled for an October date in 2021. It was given an October date for 2022, and it will be back in October for 2025. Our third and final triple header of the season kicks off the American leg with the United States Grand Prix, the only American race on the calendar. Vegas will be taking a year off, will return in 2027, and USA, COTA, October 25th. Need I say more? From the Atlantic to the Gulf, we have the Mexican Grand Prix on November 1st. Now, Mexico, it might have some boring races, but Sergio Perez, etc., I know it doesn't have a contract for 2026 yet, but I hope it does. In my fantasy, it will. From North America to South America, not Argentina, but the Brazilian Grand Prix, November 8th, round 22, Brazil. November 8th, of course. Brazil is a great track for me. Of course, it had a spectacular battle between Alonso and Perez for the podium in 2023, which was Alonso was somehow not given driver of the day because of those 13-year-old McLaren supporters. God damn. The first 2 races of the season were held in the Middle East. We're returning to the Middle East for the last 2 races. You can probably guess what those last 2 races are. Qatar, November 22nd, Abu Dhabi, November 29th. Need I say more? So that was my dream F1 calendar for 2026. What is your dream F1 calendar for 2026? Let me know in the comment section below. Toss me a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to see more content from me. I'll see you later. Goodbye.